Hey, what's happening, everybody? It's your man, Dame D and YDC, hosted the Two Mics Up podcast. Back again, a brand new Monday. Feeling fresh, feeling great, brand new energy coming to you. Season 3 continues. So, today we're going to talk about STEM, going to talk a little cybersecurity, and we're going to talk about, you know, a lot of times we call black girl magic. Today we got some black girl hack. And y'all probably looking at me like, Dame, what you talking about? Uh, Look, I'm telling you, it really exists. And today's guest is really what we a lot of times on the show and what this platform is all about. It's about finding those hidden gems. People out here in our community that are really doing things that, we find that are either a part of our tagline, educate, empower, impact. And I think she does all of that, touches us in every aspect of that. So without further ado, because I know y'all looking at me and probably listening to this like, I don't know what he's on today. He's on a fresh one. But it is the new year, so why not? Why not start fresh? And why not be challenging? So, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and bring in, today's guest, Tennisha Martin. Tennisha Martin, of Girls Hack. I'm going to stop now because now that we have you here on screen and talking, I want you to please share your background, who you are, before we get into today's topic. Tanisha, please take it away.
Absolutely. He's definitely not crazy. My name's Tennisha Martin. I'm the executive director of BlackGirlsHack. We are a nonprofit organization that is set up out of Virginia, but we operate, globally to help increase diversity in cybersecurity.
Mm,
Our mission is to, try to help bridge some of the gaps to entry for people who are trying to get into cybersecurity, specifically in the areas of ethical hacking.
mm,
So I am a professional penetration tester, and I am trying to bring more people that look like me into the space because, as you probably know, we don't see a lot of, Black people in STEM and especially in the penetration testing,
mm.
subsector within cybersecurity. So we're trying to, bridge some of those gaps, get people who are interested into the field with the training, with the mentoring, with the hands-on skills that they need to be able to enter the workforce,
Mm-hmm.
and be able to excel and thrive there.
Okay, so look, Tanisha, and I gotta be honest, because you hit me with a couple of words and some phrases that I know some other people might have been like, "What?" So, penetration testing, and what can you just kind of just briefly describe? Because it just it sounds, first of all, it sounds daunting, and it sounds like it really takes a certain skill set. Um, but how long has this been around? What was it that even caught your attention to even get into the field that you're in? Like? Can you just kind of expound on that a little bit more? Give us a little more background history on that.
Absolutely. So if you think about, as long as we've had computer systems, we've had people who are trying to break in.
Hmm.
Most of the time when people think about hackers, and that's what I refer to myself as a hacker.
Hmm.
When you think about hackers, you think about people who are trying to break in, and then take advantage of whatever it is that they're able to get, either to disrupt or to
Mm.
get information or to whatever the case may be. We
Hmm.
get emails probably every week now saying, hey, your information in the system has been breached. We just want to let you know that your email, your social security numbers, your whatever
Hmm.
has been, get uh, released out into the dark web somewhere, and somebody's
Hmm.
got all your information.
Right.
So I actually do the same type of thing that the bad guys do. But it's called ethical hacking. And
Okay.
then in ethical hacking, people pay me to try to break in to their systems, or to their web applications, for the purposes of being able to tell how the bad guys can be able to get in.
Mm.
And
Okay.
once I'm able to get in, I work with them to kind of develop a mitigation strategy to, for how to fix the issues. What can you
Hmm.
do to kind of like reduce this as a entry point into your system or into
Mm.
your network? So I'm actually working with the people who are helping to defend the organization. So you can think about like the blue team as the people who are doing network defense or who are
Hmm.
doing defense of an organization. Um, I work with them from the offensive perspective to identify what the vulnerabilities are,
Got you.
and then help them to be able to mitigate those so that those, that attack surface is kind of less.
So would you say? Because I mean, I find it here because we see a lot of this now with, like, we had the, oh man, the thing in the news a couple of months ago with the pipelines and different things. So is this really becoming? Well, I should say first of all, has it always been that active, or just now because with COVID and people really having more time on their hands, have you seen an uptick? And now it's just becoming something that we're seeing more and more every day, and now we're talking about it every day. And has there been a change since COVID, or has it just always been that way?
I don't think that there's necessarily been more of an increase during COVID. People are seeing, I think, more ransomware popping up in the news, but I think this is the same thing. When you look at some of the issues that are affecting, Black people in America,
Mm.
it's always been there. It's just,
Mhm.
being reported on more. It's being put on, social media more, so people are just more aware of it.
Mhm.
For as long as we've had computers, we've had people who have been trying to break into those computers. So it's not a new thing at
Mhm.
all. I think the other thing is some of the rules and regulations that govern our systems in the United States are, changing so that organizations have
Mhm.
to actually report these breaches. There have been cases where there's been a breach and we found out maybe 5 years later.
Oh wow.
But now there are, some rules and regulations that are coming into play in certain places where they've got, a very specific timeline, in some case hours, 72 hours after a breach, where they've got to notify,
Wow.
anybody who's been impacted. So I think that, that combination of, greater social media, people are more glued to their phones,
Mm.
and then, just the people reporting and paying attention to it now, because I think that, the media tries to make a narrative that, oh my gosh, critical infrastructure. But, as someone who's been in IT, for probably 15, 20 years at this
Mhm.
point, this has been something that has been on the radar of IT practitioners and cybersecurity practitioners for, at this point, decades.
Right.
We've always been talking about, like, hey, there's a threat. As
Right.
far as cybersecurity is concerned, to our critical infrastructure. So when you think about our oil pipelines, or when you think
Mm.
about our food, there was a
Mhm.
meat factory, I think, that, or a meat production company
Yeah.
that was ransomed
Ransomed.
at
Yep.
some point. And then, everybody, made a mad rush, like, this is going to
Yeah.
affect our beef and our pork supply. And,
Yeah.
it's now
I
that you
remember
hear
that.
about it, this is not the first time it's happened. It's just,
Right.
it's being reported now. And I think that that's some of that sensationalism, makes people go out and say, oh my gosh, I've got to buy up all the toilet paper
Right.
and all of the meat and
Right.
all of the
Right. Panic.
Clorox wipes and all
Yeah.
of the,
They straight
you know,
panic. Yeah.
yeah. So they're taking advantage of the fact that people, don't necessarily have an understanding. And most people, when you think about a hacker, they don't realize that there's two sides to the thing. They just think about, the bad guys. I told my doctor that I was a hacker, and actually my husband told her that I was a hacker, and she was like, "Why
What?
would you say that out
Right.
loud?"
Right. Right.
But then he had to explain to her that this is something that people do to protect organizations, to
Yeah.
protect small businesses. And I think that we've started to see, especially in during COVID, smaller businesses that have been getting hit with some of these things.
Right.
And they've tended, in the history, just not been a biggest target or a bigger interest to, unethical hackers, just because of the fact that they're smaller.
Right.
There's not as much in terms of data, or in terms of credit cards, or whatever it is that,
Right.
the goal is. They tend to be out of the radar. But, I think more recently they've been, popping up on a lot of people's radars. And so it's
True.
people are starting to see that, they need to do things like reuse, I mean, not reuse their passwords, and make sure that
Right.
their passwords are long and complex, and stop
Mhm.
leaving them on sticky notes and on,
Right. Right. Yeah. That.
all the things your yearly IT training teaches you.
Mhm.
We're at the beginning of the year, so we're going to have people who are saying, "Hey, compliance training, let's
Yep.
phishing training. Don't
Yep.
click on the links."
Yep, all of that. So yeah, all of that actually becomes not only your, your 9 to 5 training, that becomes your business practices as well for those who do own small businesses or operate their own businesses. So you're 100% correct in that aspect. And it just really then, so hearing it, because I really wanted to get into the background first. But now I wanted to take some time to really dive in, um, to you and Black Girls Hack. So, uh, can you tell us and our listeners, like when and I understand it sounds like you've been in IT for a moment, um, but where or what was that point that you decided, like, why you felt a need for Black Girls Hack to the origin and the creation of it.
Absolutely. So we founded as a nonprofit maybe about a year ago. We just celebrated like our 1 year anniversary. I want to say it was
Congratulations.
in October. Thank you.
Hmm.
But we existed before that as an Instagram page, and it started because I was trying to myself get into cybersecurity, and I've got several degrees, and I've got 15 years of experience, 15 or more, depending on how old I claim that I am today. Um, and I was having a hard time getting people to email me back to call me up for interviews, to even consider me for positions in cybersecurity. And I realized that there were probably people out there who were trying to get into cybersecurity who didn't have my experience, who didn't have my education,
Hmm.
who would be saying, hey, like, how am I going to be able to get up into to cybersecurity?
Hmm.
And how do I thrive there? Because like
Right.
I said before, we don't see a lot of minorities that are operating in that space. So
Hmm.
it started off as an Instagram page, basically just sharing things like when Bundle, which is a nonprofit for books. They do some other things as well, but when they released, books that were related to programming or cybersecurity, I tell people about them so that they could, be able to get resources for cheaper, right?
Hmm.
Because getting, 20 books for $15 is a lot better than, hitting up your local retailer and paying
True.
$100 per book.
True.
I come from an era where, we went to the college bookstore and used to get hit over the
Yeah.
head,
Yeah.
you know,
Yep.
f- when it came time to start classes. So,
Yep.
this was something that I shared anytime someone had training that was reduced or free. And then it just became like, hey, how can I get as much information out to the people who are trying to get into cybersecurity as possible?
Hmm.
And then someone actually reached out to me maybe about a year into us operating as an Instagram page and said, "Hey, there are these grants that are funding." People who are trying to do this type of work. If you incorporate as a nonprofit, you can apply for
Mm.
this particular grant. And I,
Awesome.
I didn't know who that person was, but they were just like, "Hey, I see what you're out here doing. I see what you're
Awesome.
trying to do. I just
Hmm.
want you to know that if you did this, that you can make it happen." So
Right.
we filed our papers to become a nonprofit, and there's a little bit of a backlog because of COVID,
Hmm.
but we became a nonprofit, and then we started realizing that there are companies out there who want to be able to give back, and
Yep.
they're trying to also increase the amount of minorities that are in cybersecurity.
Hmm.
And during that time, we've grown, geographically. So we've got
Wow.
people throughout the United States, and we've got some folks that are in Europe and Africa and
Awesome.
the Caribbean, and we've
Awesome.
got it's not just Black girls.
Hmm.
Our squad, as I affectionately call them, have everything under the rainbow in terms of
Wow.
gender identity, in terms of color identity, whatever the case may be. We've got I think probably maybe 500 or 600 people who interact with us on a regular basis.
Wow.
We've probably trained, I think, thousands of people at this point in ethical hacking or in cybersecurity, to help kind of explore careers in cybersecurity. So we want to kind of work with some of these organizations to help develop a pipeline for employment for the people, but
Awesome.
then also to provide training resources. Because one of the, I guess, when we did kind of a gap analysis between, what's keeping people from getting into cybersecurity, one of the things that
Hmm.
we identified was that certifications are thousands of dollars.
Dollars. Yeah.
Training for those certification, is much more than that.
Right.
And we have people out here, in the middle of, what's everything that's going on right now in the world. People who are just trying to survive and live day to day,
Right.
right?
Right.
So,
Right.
we don't want the financial barriers for entry to
Mm.
prevent them from being able to
Yeah.
explore a career that's going to, help us to be able to improve the industry. So,
Right.
we've partnered with some organizations like Range Force and
Wow.
Pentester Academy to provide training to the organization for free. so that they can get skills.
That's
And then
awesome.
we're trying to combine that with like our hands-on trainings, our hands-on workshops, and exposures, just so that people can realize what it is that they're getting into with a
Mm-hmm.
career in cybersecurity, what that looks like to be, what do you do day to day for as a
Right.
penetration tester, for example, and then to be able to actually stay, because we all know that toxic work
Yeah.
environments or
Yeah.
people who are not supportive of seeing a black face there,
Yep.
or a brown face
Mm-hmm.
there,
Yep.
could cause you not to want to work there anymore,
Right.
right? So we want to kind of like just prepare them for what it is that they're going to be up against, just being a very very small minority
Man,
operating in a a tech space. And
that's
uh,
awesome. It really is like all of that. And this is really why I was excited. We came across your information and just really digging in to what Black Girl Hacks is really all about and what you're doing. This is a one of those, like I said, it's one of those micro uh cosms or snapshots of what's going on in America with a field of work opportunity that we do not expand and move ourselves into. And I'm glad to have you come on and talk about it because I hear several different things. I love the fact that, for you as a woman of color, you're trying to promote and advance other women who look like yourself to come and really find out what this is all about and really have the possibility of a long and healthy career in an industry that's really starting to boom and grow. Um, the second thing that I love is that you're not just here you're international now. We're talking about a global thing, and that's again too because now we're talking about diversity, but diversity from our side of the table, which is almost unheard of. And I think kudos to you for your vision and the work that you're doing. But I want to ask though, listening to it, and I think for me this was one of the key questions that I had. Um, how do you suggest we encourage adults to motivate their children, because really that's our future. We're talking, we can have adults who can still get in it, but really I think we have to look beyond just ourselves. But how do we get our young children uh more involved in STEM programs?
And see, that's the money question right there, because I don't think that it's enough for us to be able to make a lasting impact just to kind of get adults that are into the industry. We want to
Right.
do that because when you think in the Black community about jobs that are typically said, hey, you should do this. It's like the doctors, the lawyers, the engineers, or
Mm-hmm.
the entertainers, or the
Mm-hmm.
people like that, right? You don't tend to hear people saying, hey, go be a computer scientist, go be a data scientist, go be, an ethical hacker, right? So we realized that, we're not going to be able to make a lasting impact in the industry just from adults. So we're actually in the beginning of this year going to be rolling out a Black Kids Hack program,
Wow.
because we realize, and it's going to be targeted towards like the K through 12 population, because we
Awesome.
realize that in order to have an impact, I guess, for future generations in the field, it's not going to be enough just to get people into the jobs now. We also need to make sure
Mm-hmm.
that research that's going to be coming up in the development of algorithms and machine learning, all of that is impacted by having people of color,
Mm-hmm.
specifically women, in the room.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to get people interested when they're in the the K through 12, because a lot of times by the time you've made it to college or by the time you've graduated, you've already got a degree in a thing, right? You've
Right.
already had an
Right.
idea of what you thought your path is going to be.
Right.
And whereas I went back and got like additional degrees, some people may not be able to afford that economically and support their
Right.
family. So I want people to know that this is an option before it's like they feel like it's too late. A lot of people, feel like, once they've picked on their career, that they can't, change it later on. I'm too old to be changing
Right.
careers. I'm too old. But, I'll have you know that we've got people in our organization that are in their 50s and 60s who are trying to,
Mm.
transition into cybersecurity, who are still working. So we want to get, people interested in the, especially the younger generation interested, so that they can know the possibilities out here. It's lucrative to be a penetration tester, an
Mm-hmm.
ethical hacker. It's fun, and it's very gamified in a way that I think the people who are coming up, it presents a challenge. It's like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
I'm presented with a task of trying to break in with
Right.
permission, of course.
Right.
And then, if you can break in, then you can help that organization to improve their infrastructure, to improve their networks. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that, some of the kids who have grown up with, tablets in their hands and,
Right.
iPads in their hands, that they, are going to adopt technology in a way that, some of the folks who are older, you know,
Mm-hmm.
don't quite do it, because
Right.
like my mom, for example, she didn't grow up with, cell phones. She didn't grow up, doing things on a computer.
Right.
But we have kids now who can hop on their parents', phone,
Okay.
unlock it because they've, seen what the gestures are for the
Yeah.
codes. And,
Yep.
we're seeing that they're, adopting the technology at a much younger age. And, as they're spending all their lives on netbooks and tablets and, all the things anyway,
Right.
why not make money for it?
Man.
I see people who are, especially like, I guess what I would consider like some of the OGs in the
Mm-hmm.
industry,
Mm-hmm.
before this was, something that people actually talked about, back when it was just like information security analyst or whatever it
Right.
is.
Right. Right.
They're teaching their children, and they're like, hey, my 9-year-old is breaking in, or my 8-year-old is doing this. And I'm like, that's what we want to see. There's no, age restrictions to what it is that we do. It really just requires an understanding of, the way the computers work and the way that people think.
Mm.
And a lot of people feel like, hey, I can't be a hacker because I don't know how to program.
Mm.
And you don't have to know how to program. There are people, who operate in the space who never have to program, a day of their careers.
Oh
And,
wow.
I think that a lot of people try to find internal blockers or reasons why they think that they
Mm.
can't do it. Oh, I
Mm-hmm.
can't afford it, or I can't do this. But, there are organizations like mine that are out here that are, we're partnering with like CompTIA to bring up to 50% off of the certifications
Oh
for
wow.
people to
Wow.
kind of
That's awesome.
reduce the financial barriers.
Yeah.
We're, and EC Council for some of the
Mm.
certified ethical hacker type things. We're getting people trained in that. Not to mention there are other. We recently just partnered with INE. We haven't actually, even said that, out loud to the world yet, but we're
Breaking news. Breaking news.
yeah. So we're working with all of these organizations who are trying to, and they're all certification providers, right?
Mm.
They're have the industry standards in terms of, being certified in, showing a company that you have this particular set of skill sets.
Wow.
And they're willing to, reduce or, eliminate the cost of these certifications so that people can be able to get in, because
Man.
that's one of the barriers to entry,
Yeah. That's
because
huge.
when you look at training for some of the, security plus, for example, people are out here charging
Mm-hmm.
$3,000 for
Yeah.
security plus training, and
Yeah.
in the 2 years that we have been around, we've been offering free security plus study groups. We're helping
Wow.
people to, kind of study, and we're able to do that, I think through the generosity of, a lot of
Wow.
our
Huge.
donors, our corporate partners. So we realize that, people are trying to increase diversity. They want to change the way that their organizations look, not just at the
Mm-hmm.
bottom level, but I think at the mid and upper
Upper
levels as
levels. Yep.
well. And to do that, we kind of got to like start feeding into the pipeline, like I said, the K through 12 population, so that they can be aware of careers such as this. And then, older, so that we can get people now into the workforce. They said that there are like 3.5 million jobs. I don't, I think it's in the United States, but it might be worldwide. 3.5 million jobs that are available in cybersecurity. And
Wow.
they said that there is negative unemployment in cybersecurity, that, if you want a job at cybersecurity, that you basically can get it.
Right.
But I'm here to tell you that, there's more to, I guess, that storyline, because, like I said, we represent, hundreds of members of our squad who are trying to get into cybersecurity, who may have a degree and
Mm-hmm.
or some certifications, but are still not able to get into the field.
It's healed. Yeah.
And I think that part of the reason is that there's a gap between where educational institutions, so I'm thinking like colleges, grad schools, are dumping students out, and where jobs hope to pick them back up.
Right.
So it's not that you can actually just graduate with a degree in cybersecurity or computer science right now, and then go and immediately get a
And get
job.
a job. Yeah.
Right. So there's some, I always say this elusive combination of certifications, education,
Yeah.
and work experience that people want to see.
Yep.
And a lot of times you'll see, for example, what's considered a, quote unquote entry level job that wants 5 years of experience,
Right.
5 to 10 years of experience and a certification that you have to have, 5 years of experience in order to get, the CISSP, which
Right.
is, one of those certifications that's like considered advanced in our
Mm-hmm.
industry.
Right.
But and they're like, you want somebody who has a CISSP to pay them, entry level money, and it's
Money.
like
Yeah.
it's not going to work that way.
Nope. Nope. Yeah.
Right now, because of the fact that there is, negative employment in cybersecurity, a lot of folks that I work with have, taken the opportunity to go to new jobs, to go to new companies, to
Yeah.
make,
The money.
more money.
Money. Mm-hmm.
And they're able to do that because, there are not a lot of people who are operating in this space.
Mm.
But, cybersecurity has traditionally been, a white man's industry.
Yeah.
And the bag is out here. We are always talking about getting the bag, right? So
And
I want to let people know, especially people who are like, hey, I don't know what I want to do with my life. Know that there's definitely a bag in cybersecurity. There's definitely a
mm-hmm.
bag in STEM, and it's just you don't have to be a programmer. You don't
Yep.
necessarily have to go back to school. There are people who don't have college degrees that
Yep.
are out here killing
Yep.
it and making
Yep.
well into six figures. So,
Yeah.
when we're talking about like the bag, people try to say, oh, well, I want a job that I don't have to, whatever, and they say, I have to go get training or I have to go get the certifications. There are organizations out here who are trying to
Yep.
make that less of a financial
Financial
decision
burden. Yep.
and more of a just put the time in there,
Look.
yeah,
Everything that you just said right there, because I know personally a couple of people, um, close friends and family that, and like you said, and a lot of times when we talk education here, a lot of times people think it is, going through college or university. There are opportunities out here, and that's what I find so fascinating. And like I said, the two that I know, no college degree, no college education at all. They were working a 9 to 5, came across this similar conversation with people that they knew, and went and just really put the time in. At the time, without knowing a lot of this here, that there's avenues to obtain funds and things like that. But put the time in and pay for these certifications, and are now six-figure people. I mean, living the life, and really, I don't want to call it easy, but like it's very fun to them when I hear them talk about their job, because it is some of the key words you said. It's like a game. The challenge of defeating or becoming victorious in accessing entry points and entry ways into companies that maybe they're supporting, this, that, and the third. So it is possible.
it
And
definitely is.
it and there is a lucrative amount of money uh in this industry. And I want to go, before I go to the next question, I want to pause for the cause really quick, and break for a commercial. I want to thank our sponsors here, on Two Mics Up, for supporting our show and really helping us continue to elevate and bring conversations such as this to you each and every week. So, ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. We'll be right back after the break. All right, we're back, ladies and gentlemen. Your man, Dame DNYDC, hosted the Two Mics Up podcast with today's guest, Tennisha Martin, founder, Black Girls Hack. So, Tanisha, we were talking, about the bag, education opportunities, financial assistance for those who are, interested in getting into cybersecurity. And I'm just going to say, look, if y'all are just now tuning in, you missed a whole lot in the first half. So if you're streaming this, you need to just stop right now, go back to the beginning. If you're watching this today on YouTube, stop, go back to the beginning. There's a whole lot of information out here that, our sister Tanisha has really been sharing with us today, and you really don't want to miss this, and we're going to continue on. But I have to ask too, because there was and I think you briefly mentioned it in the first portion that I wanted to touch on, mentoring. And to my understanding, if I'm correct, you do offer mentoring services and programs, through Black Girls Hack. So could you please need to take a moment and just talk to us about that?
Absolutely. So we one of the things that we identified, I mentioned earlier that we kind of did a gap analysis of what was preventing people from getting into cybersecurity, and
Hmm.
I think one of the things that prevents us from living our best lives, I think in the industry, has been not having an insider or not having somebody
Mm,
to be able to ask questions.
yes.
So we realized that mentoring is very important into you know getting a new career and just being able to survive in an environment that may not necessarily be like the one you
Hmm.
necessarily grew up in.
Right.
The corporate world is what I'm referring to. So we try to talk to people and let them know what to expect, what's a day to day look like? What should
Hmm.
you be asking for money? One of the stories that I tell people frequently is that when 15 or whatever years ago, when I started in the IT industry, I had just gotten out of school and I had a master's degree and a bachelor's degree in computer engineering, and I went to apply for my first job at one of the major consulting firms in the DMV area. And they said to me, hey, we want to give you $55,000 a year. And me, a little black girl from
Hmm.
Northeast DC,
Right.
that was more money than most of the people that I knew were
Hmm.
making in their, in their lives, after being
Right.
in careers for, decades at this point. So I was like, I'm making dumb money. Like I'm
Right.
excited, right? So there was actually another woman who went to my same grad school. I knew her because we were in our grad school programs together. She went to the same school. She ended up working at the same firm, and she ended up making, I think, to start 70,000 or 75,000 to start with
Hmm.
the same background. She had an engineering background from Berkeley, and I had an engineering background from Carnegie Mellon University, which are
Okay.
two very prestigious schools, and we went to the same grad school, right? So there was no difference in terms of our, experience, in terms of our education. It was just that she knew her worth and her value, and I did not. I
Bingo.
looked at it from the perspective of, this is more money than I've been
Yep.
piecing together,
Yep.
working odd jobs,
Yep.
throughout college, more money than I've ever seen. So I'm like, okay, I'm in there. I didn't even care at the time, what they called me. I went into the company as a level one consultant. She
Hmm.
actually went in as a level two.
Wow.
And, when I talked to her, after we had both started the company, I was like, talking to her, and she was like, yeah, I wouldn't go in as a level one because, there's a lot of, stuff that you have to do to get from level one to level two. And,
Hmm.
as having a master's degree, you should go in as a level two. And I was
Right.
like, I didn't know that. And I didn't, care what they called me. I literally said, as long as the check
Right.
clears, I don't care what they call me.
Right.
And that was kind of like the wrong way to approach,
Hmm.
you know, the industry
Right.
and I
Yep.
guess working at period, right?
Right.
But I didn't know any better.
Hmm.
And I think that, having somebody to tell you, what you should be asking for in terms of your salary, I think is key
Yeah.
to being able to succeed.
Yeah.
Which is why I recommend that, people not try to approach any career by themselves, that they get,
Agreed.
one or more mentors
Agreed.
to be able to ask questions. And I also suggest that people get mentors that are outside of their comfort zone. So a lot of my
Agreed.
mentors have been women. A lot
Yep.
of my mentors have been black. But when it comes down to it, when you look at the numbers, women typically make less money than men doing the same types of jobs. And we also see that depending on your nationality, your race,
Yep.
you may make less money than other people out there.
Yep.
So when I'm telling people today in 2000 and 21, 22 to
Mhm.
get into the industry. I'm saying go find a white man who is
Yep.
operating in this space and ask them what you
Yep.
should be expecting coming in as a whatever it is that you're doing, before you start negotiating for the job,
Yep.
because people will limit themselves.
Of course.
I tell this story all the time, and my husband hates it. But I tell the story about how he was going from a civil engineer into IT. And, at the time he was saying, I just want 68 to 72,
Right.
because he was making less money than that at his old job. So he was
Right.
like, this is the goal.
Right.
And I'm like, sir, you're in the DMV. You should
Right.
be accepting nothing less than six figures
Yep.
for a
Yep.
job in IT.
Yep.
Nothing less.
Yep.
You shouldn't even have conversations that don't start with them
Right.
100,000.
Right.
And he was able to get a job using that advice,
Mhm.
making much more money than that. And it's because he had somebody, an insider who
Yep.
knew what
Yep.
it is that you should be asking for. If you approach it from the, I've used my survival skills basically to get through DC.
Yep.
That's not going to also get you through the corporate
No.
world. And
Nope.
I think that you need people who have had experience navigating that, especially as you start to level up in your career. You go to middle management or
Yeah.
individual contributor or whatever it is.
Yeah. Whatever it
As you
is.
level up,
Yep.
you need to find people who are at that level or above, so that you can know what to expect, what it is that
Mhm.
people are looking for, so that you're not kind of behind the curve.
Well,
Because we don't want people to be out here like, hey, I'm getting the bag, I'm making $70,000 in tech
yeah.
in the
Yeah.
DMV, and we're
But you
like,
you
dude,
leaving money on the table. You're selling yourself short.
yeah,
You
there are
li-
literally janitors, and not to disparage janitors in any way, but I'm
right.
just saying, like, there are literally janitors who are making, you know,
Yep.
90,
Hundred
100,000
thousand
in the
easy.
DMV, just because
Easy.
like they've got a security clearance and they have,
Mhm.
what I'm saying? Like,
Yep.
so you have to know your market, you have to know the job industry, and you have to know, what you should be making. You
I
shouldn't
agree.
just approach it like, hey, I was an educator, I'm coming from um teaching schools,
Yeah.
and I was making, $40,000. So if I can get a job making $60,000,
Nah.
that's going to be golden,
And
right?
you
And I'm like, sis, no,
yeah,
we're
you
not
got to
going to
raise the
approach.
bar. Yeah, you got to
Yeah,
raise the bar. You can't. And I think you touched on it. So many of us come from disadvantaged communities as it is, and we really have a hard time. We don't have confidence sometimes in ourselves. 'Cause we don't have people that are invested in us to really sit down and show us. Because I would look, my wife and I, we went through the same thing with our daughter. We both went through the same thing in our careers, and you hit on two things that I like. That one, you found a white male, uh, because that influence is real. I don't care where you go and what career. And I too had a similar, uh, I don't want to call it a break, but someone of the a white male. So he was like, "Yo, Damon," he said, "There's something about you. You're smart. You want to," and he said, "Please don't take this wrong. You're one of the smartest people I ever met." And a lot of time he said it because I know sometimes as a black man, when you say people or use terms like that, you feel. He said, "I don't mean it that way." He said, "Literally, I mean you're one of the smartest people I ever know, I've ever met and known." And he said, "You have a ability to do X, Y, Z." And he kind of sat me down and really picked my brain about, well, where do you see yourself? Where do you feel that you want to go? And at the time, I was in the trade show industry, and I had just moved down from New York, and I'm trying to figure out my way. And he kind of set me on a path early on. I was doing that for 15 years. I became, a district operations manager, and I started out in customer service. And this was all within 5 years. But again, it was that conversation that he kind of helped guide me and navigate me. And I think it's really important that we get out of our comfort zone, like you said, challenge ourselves. Because a lot of times when we're around our peers, sometimes our peers, let's just call it what it is, our peers don't want to see you win. That crab in the barrel mentality that we have sometimes
you
is
better
really.
preach.
I'm just saying, and we're gonna keep it real here. So but sometimes you got to step out of your comfort zone and make moves uh, that are really built on where you want to go. You have to know where you want to go and put people other than yourself in your place, and really pick their brain, because that's how we become successful. I say all of that too, though, to say we're talking about success and how you navigate it. So like now where you are with Black Girls Hack, let's just say, because I think it's It's amazing. And just to hear what you've talked about today has been phenomenal. But let's talk big picture. Let's go, let's say 5 years from now. Where do you see, you know, Black Girls Hack and the impact it'll continue to have on the community?
So I just want to touch on one thing before I answer that question.
Sure.
I challenge everybody, if your friend circle is not giving you what it is that you need, if they are not
Mm,
encouraging you to do better,
mm.
I challenge you to find new friends. I know
Oh,
I jokingly say all the time, like, no new friends, no new friends, right?
oh.
Because that is the thing. But if you don't have people in your circle who are challenging you, who are inspiring you to be better and to do better, you
Mm.
honestly need new friends. I've got my day one friends. I've got the people who I have been with for at this point 20, 30 years.
Yep.
But I have other friends that are doing things that are operating specifically in the cybersecurity
Yep.
space, because I need people to challenge me
Yes,
and
indeed.
challenge what my expectations are.
Yes, indeed.
I actually got there's a program that I recommend to everybody who's trying to operate in cyber. That's called Share the Mic in Cyber, and I actually participated that this a couple times this past year, and I was paired with a mentor that her name is Rachel Toback, and she kind of challenged what my goals were.
Mm.
She kind of made it so it's like think bigger, dream
Yep.
bigger.
Yep.
You are not living to your fullest potential. And for somebody who operates in the same space that I'm trying to navigate in, saying, hey, what the potential is something that I think is
It's
very
huge.
important. So
It's
I
huge.
think it's not just important that we have mentors that can direct us and can guide us and give us advice, but I think it's also important that we have friends that are leveling up and are
Yes.
inspiring us to
Yes.
level up as well. So I
Yes.
just wanted to to point
Hey.
on that before
Hey,
I
I got to applaud that because you 100% right. That's really what it's all about, and that was very well said. I applaud you for that. Thank you.
But to your question, you said, what do I see for Black Girls Hack 5 years down the line and the impact that it's going to have on our community?
Hmm.
So I was actually just literally last night working on my 5 year plan, both for, Tennisha, the
Wow.
individual, and then also for, Black Girls Hack. And one of the things that I want to do in the next 5 years for Black Girls Hack is I want to, basically be able to get contracts for penetration testing for ethical hacking work, and then hire them as interns or apprentices or
Mm.
whatever to get the actual work experience. I think I mentioned to you earlier that there's three things that people are looking for. They're looking for certifications, they're looking for work experience, and they're looking for education, right?
Hmm.
So, if we can help to, we're working with the certification companies to kind of reduce some of those financial barriers for the certifications. If we can get the folks some work experience so they can say, hey, I did a 6 month intern ship at Black Girls Hack, working on real world ethical hacking and penetration
Mm.
testing problems, then we can help to develop a pipeline to get these people into jobs.
Right.
And I
Right.
want to be able to partner with corporate entities that are looking for a certain set of skills for their their new people coming in, saying, hey, this is what we want them to learn. We'll have them work on those types of problems, we'll have them solve them, and then be able to through after a 6 months program, be able to say, hey, we can hand you
Hmm.
off now to the fangs, or
Right.
I think it's a mang now, the Meta, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, and
Yeah. Yeah.
Google, to the big players in the tech space, and say, hey, you can hire these people and have confidence that they've got some certifications, they've got some hands-on experience to be able to tackle real world problems. And
Right.
that's one of the things that I want to be able to do, because
Mm.
for so many people, like I find them hitting their head up against the wall, because I got my certification, I got my my uh I finished my degree, but
Hmm.
no one's responding back to me. I've updated my resume. I've heard of people literally out here paying literally thousands of dollars
Dollars.
to
Yep.
update their resumes. I'm like, why are you doing that? We have a team of people who will review your resume for free, so
Mm.
that you can be able to get a job, so that we can kind of like highlight some of the tech skills that you
Wow.
have
That's
in
awesome.
maybe non-tech industries, so that you can focus on the value that you brought to those organizations,
Right.
and then be able to do that. So we have the job piece. We have we're doing mock interviews with them to help them prepare.
Mm.
I want to be able to be able to say, hey, you've hung out with us for 6 months or whatever, go get a job and get your bag.
Bag.
And
Yep.
there are companies out here who are doing that are operating in the space. I'm thinking about like some of the boot camps, but if you look at some of those programs, you have people paying $20,000 to do
Yeah.
like a cybersecurity boot
Yep.
camp for 6 months or 8 weeks or whatever it is, and
Crazy.
then like hey, you may or may not get a job. And
Right.
I want people to be able to have confidence and that they can hire these people, because they've had you know the 6 months of hands-on experience in
Mm-hmm.
the space. And
Right.
hopefully we can do that in other industries, other subsections of cybersecurity as well, not just ethical hacking. That's why I always try to bring exposure to people who, like my blue team partners or blue team, counterparts. I try to bring them as much as possible to speak to the squad because, I'm not just trying to increase the number of ethical hackers out here. I'm trying to increase the number of people in cybersecurity who can be able to operate in this space because we see a lot of real world impacts to not having Black people
Yeah.
and women operating in the
Yeah.
space. When we look at like healthcare
Yeah.
outcomes, or we look at
Yeah.
criminal justice
Yep.
outcomes, or we look at any number of outcomes that are decision based on algorithms that are developed by basically white men.
Yep.
And we
Yep.
need to kind of remove some of that bias, which we need people who are doing research in these areas. We need people who are studying this in school, right? So this is why
Mm-hmm.
we need to start getting people in the K through 12. It, for me, it goes
Man.
always goes back to the K through 12 because I feel like this is a problem that needs to be handled, I guess, in two fronts.
Yep.
One is education,
Yep.
and I think that the other is through public private partnerships,
Yep.
so that we can kind of like they have a need to give back, right? There are
Yep.
tax breaks, there are any
Yep.
number of incentives,
Yep.
just being a good organization to
Right.
being able to give back. And we're trying to increase the diversity. They say that
Mm.
in diversity is important. They've got DEI initiatives and
Right.
DEI managers and VPs and
So
whatever.
let's put it to
So
work.
let's do more than lip
Yeah.
service. Let's
Right.
actually move the needle.
Right.
And we see, when you look at diversity numbers over the course of a lot of the Fortune 500 companies, especially over the past 5 years, we're seeing an increase in diversity. But when we see that it is female diversity, we're seeing a lot
Mm-hmm.
more white women who are joining the executive ranks, and a lot more white men that are joining the boards. So
Yep.
the diversity numbers are in fact increasing, but that's not really diversity.
Diversity. No. And I think we've talked about that here on the show in the past. It's an illusion.
It is.
It's
It's like juking the stats. It's like,
there. You go.
we're going to kind of like reclass. I watch a lot of crime TV, and it's like we're going to reclassify the stats so that it looks
Right.
like we've reduced crime. And,
Right.
like it's, but when it comes down to it, like I'm talking about, we don't have to juke the stats. We can actually make a difference
Make a difference. Mm-hmm.
in the diversity of these organizations. I
Right.
gave a talk at SANS conference maybe a month or two ago, and I was talking about how like companies that have diverse boards, companies that have diverse executive leadership teams,
Mm-hmm.
are, I think it was something like twice as more likely to hit their financial targets. They are making much more money. Like I think it
Right.
was something like twofold more money than
Right.
companies that did not have diverse boards. We still have Fortune companies right now that have entirely all
All.
white and you
Mm-hmm.
know boards. And it's
Yep.
like, this is 2021. If you're going to be a public company that's operating the space, you should have a commitment to representing your leadership, not just your rank and file, but your
No
leadership and
leadership.
your executive teams, with diversity, not just women and Black women or brown women,
Right.
like having a little bit of everybody so that you can have diversity in thought and perspective and experience,
Right.
because I may bring something from the depths of Northeast DC
Right.
that you don't have,
Right.
growing up in, I don't know, like
It's valuable. I mean, there's
the Bay
value there.
Area. I don't
Right.
know.
It's value. You bring a you have the potential to bring a value and a profit and something that they've never experienced and never seen before. But again, because so many companies, like you said, their leadership is that old, rigid white male perspective. They're stuck in the 40s and 50s. The mentality of the company stays there. And, like I said, in here in 2022, we want to continue to push the needle and really put the pressure on these companies to really start making real diverse changes, not
Yeah.
manipulating the number by a white woman per se and putting her in a position and moving a male to the board. That doesn't change anything. That it's all an illusion. And I
Yeah,
thank you for
absolutely.
clar- you said that so eloquently. So as we're coming, to the close of this amazing conversation, Tanisha, I just want to ask, you know, right now, or if you were looking at your calendar, and anything coming up here as we start off the new year, is there anything that you can share that you'd like to talk about, that maybe members of our community and our audience maybe can do to either support, help, join, be a part of? Please take a few moments here. Just talk about maybe what you have coming up next.
Absolutely. So we are currently coming into the new year. So we do a lot of workshops that are, new year based. So, people use the new year as an excuse or a reason to start a new thing, to, get involved in something that they, should have been started, last year in the middle of, of the year. So we have like some new year, new labs, new year type of, new you type of workshops where we are helping people to set up a home lab so that they can be able to practice the skills that they want in the comfort of their own home for free,
Mm.
and not have to worry about paying for things. You can actually get your start and learn, I want to say 60% of the things that you need to learn from the comfort of your own home without actually being connected to the internet. And I
Wow.
can show you how to do that. We have a lab that's coming up in the beginning of January. You can sign up on our meetup page, so it's meetup.com/BlackGirlsHack. We also have some other workshops that are coming up in terms of mock interviews, in terms of resume review, and we provide mentors to people who join our organization. So
Mm.
the website is blackgirlshack.org. And then also in the new year, if you are looking to find a good, a good organization to donate to, Black Girls Hack is a nonprofit. Our nonprofit is called BGF, which is Black Girls Hack, BGH Foundation. And we basically are trying to provide, some of the barriers to entry, reduce some of the barriers to entry for people who are trying to get into the space. So the certifications, the hands-on training, the mentoring, the resume review, the mock interviews to prepare you for careers. And we also have partnerships with organizations that have like cloud-based
Mm.
cybersecurity training as well. So there are definitely some benefits to joining our organization. We welcome literally anybody. You don't have to be a Black girl to join, or you don't have to be, you know, Black or a girl. There are people who,
Mhm.
kind of like creep around or lurk around our Slack spaces. Like, I don't want anybody to know that I'm in here and I'm,
Right.
I'm Indian or I'm white, or and I'm like, if you're willing to learn, you want to learn cybersecurity, I welcome you anywhere that I'm at. Like, I want
Right.
to help people learn, and I want to see people that we don't currently see, operating the space. We've got people who are even white men who are trying to, who are using our resources
Right.
to level up. And I think that if it's available out there for you, it's free. Take advantage of it. And also, as a 501c3, if you are looking to an organization to donate to, blackgirlshack.org/donate. We accept, and your donations are tax deductible. So I, would really love if we could get some more mentors, some more volunteers. We've got some leadership positions. We are trying to be the change that we want to see in the industry. So we want to have some diversity. We want to have people that can help, lead the next generation of ethical hackers to, the cybersecurity promised land,
All
so that we can,
right.
start to see a difference in the future.
I love it, man. I really do, Tanisha. Thank you so much for taking time out to sit down and just really educate me today and educate our audience. Look here, ladies and gentlemen, we all about cracking the code. This lady, this sister, is out here really pioneering a whole new forefront for us to go ahead and follow. Get on board. Go out and support. You know, all the information, we'll make sure, Tanisha, that we put your information in the bio and in the link below. Like I said, ladies and gentlemen, if you're streaming this, go back to the beginning, play this a couple of times. If you're
Run it
watching this,
back.
yeah, run it back. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you're gonna hit them links down in the bio because we're gonna leave them all down there for you. Go out and support Black Girls Hack. Hey, look, two mics up, great episode. You can follow us online at www.2micsup.com. You can continue to follow us on our social media platforms, IG, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at 2 Mics Up. And look, don't forget, hit that subscribe button if you haven't subscribed already. Hit the bell so you can be notified of all the newest content coming to you from us here at 2 Mics Up. And like we always do at this time, ladies and gentlemen, May you stay safe, stay blessed. Mike's out.